Hello and welcome back to More Talk. I'm your host, Cooper Moore, and I'm here at Bella Vista Hotel in the podcast room. They've treated us very nice, and I'm here today with Mathew Ruff. How are you today, buddy?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I am quite excited, actually.
Are you?
Yeah, because it was kind of a weird experience. You texting me and going, "Hey, I would love to be on a podcast." I'm like, 100%. Yeah, let's do it. So, firstly, I want to talk about what do you want to be when you grow up? And I know you've probably grown up a little bit, but still, what is like your kind of end goal?
So, I don't really know. My end goal is to go to uni, which that's basically set up now.
Yeah.
So I've been accepted into a double degree
Yep.
for psychological science and exercise and sports science.
Sweet, yeah.
So
And which uni are you doing?
ACU.
ACU, sweet, yeah.
It's a pain because it's in Strathfield. I'm only in Blacktown.
Yeah.
Catching,
Oh no, that's such a pain.
and there's an ACU in Blacktown.
Exactly, yeah.
And yeah, so I'm like, okay, well, let's just figure out something else, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, but it's also a pain because there's two stations, like Strathfield and whatever is after it, and it's all the way out here.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like a 45-minute walk to the station.
You're
You can
joking.
do shuttle buses and stuff.
Yeah.
But my courses are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the shuttle buses are Monday and Friday, of course. So the 2 days I'm not there, that
Well, that's a little bit bad luck, I guess.
it really annoyed me because when I first got the offer, I went straight to the campus and just sort of looked around and
100%, yeah.
talked to a few people about, is it a good uni? Do you like it here and whatever?
Yeah.
And they're like, everything about it is awesome, except for the fact that unless you have a car, it's impossible to get to.
Yeah.
Which for me, it's all right because I do have a car, but I don't want to drive all the time.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like, but at the end of the day, it's the sacrifice you got to take. So
How much would it take to drive there compared to public transport? Like, do you have to catch tolls, and is it like a lot more petrol?
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's got to go down the M7.
Yep.
Then onto the M4. So that's 2 sets of tolls to begin with.
yeah, already got a good
There
start.
and back. And unless you go all around like Sydney Olympic Park.
Yeah, you go through every back street.
And I'm like, I want to go home, or I want to get there as
100%.
quickly as possible. I don't
Yeah.
want to be, but yeah, like, and especially the way that like the world is at the moment, you've got bloody, fuel, because I'm doing 98 at the moment. It's $2.50 on average.
Oh no, it's ridiculous.
So you're like,
No, I'm lucky. Nicole drives me around.
Oh,
I don't have a car yet. I'm about to get a car, but the cars I'm looking at, they're like, they're big cars, and I'm trying to get diesel and they're like, forward drive, whatever. Like, it just like they burn fuel, they eat it
Oh,
up.
yeah.
I'm just like, I'm probably better off with like an electric car or like a Prius or like something that a few drops can give it 100 kilometers.
yeah.
But it's ridiculous now. I
Oh,
guess.
and it's not just stuff like fuel. It's the cost of living because of COVID.
Yeah.
It's skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't say my mum and I especially were particularly well off, but we're not doing bad for ourselves.
Yeah.
Inflation, interest rates, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, we're about to sell because of it.
Really.
It's like we've got nothing else.
Yeah.
Because COVID screwed everything up for everyone,
100%,
really.
Yeah.
So it's like, we either, just try and take more loans and get up more debt, or we can just try and sell and
Start
hopefully
over.
Yeah, start new. But at the end of the day, it's going to happen to everyone. Like,
Exactly.
we're not the only people that are going to be affected by it. So
There was an interesting point my dad made for me, right? He bought a property here, right? Normal house, everything normal. 20 years ago, right? It's across from the Kellyville Metro, like just like Clarendon Homes area, right? I love that. I still live in it, right? He's owned it for 20 odd years, right? He bought it for, I think, $200,000, right?
mm,
Now it'll be, I don't know, maybe $1 million, maybe 1.1, or maybe 900, something like that,
Mm.
right? Doesn't matter though, because if he sells it, even though it's, so much profit, he can't buy anything else afterwards in that area.
Yeah.
There's no point. You have to
you-
downsize
You
again,
have
which
to go to like Seven Hills or something just to get something.
so there's like no point. It's not even like you find an area and you're good. You can't get anything else in that area
No.
without causing a nuisance, you
Yeah.
know? So I don't know what everyone expects young people in generation to do about that?
Oh, well, first home buyers, like for people our age going up into our sort of early 20s, it's going to be impossible.
No.
Like a couple of the boys and I were thinking about just um, like all living together, like the four or five of us, and
Yep.
splitting the rent 4 or 5 ways,
Yeah.
which, you know, they'd get a pain in the ass a bit at times, but,
Yeah.
um, but at the end of the day, that's probably the only way you're going to be able to do it unless you come into, a lot of money
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
It's just not going to it's just not going to happen.
No.
And it's a shame because especially owning like I haven't got a home, but apparently actually owning your first home is like the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And for people our age going up into the marketing like the home market, it's not going to work. It's just
No.
never going to happen. And
It's not.
yeah, I don't know. It's a bit
I think they're expecting everyone to start to live in apartments. Like, usually people just went straight to a home and
mm,
they just lived in there forever. Now it's going to be straight to apartments and
yeah.
have to try and use the apartment to get the home and then use that home to get a bigger home. And then it's just like,
Mm.
it's going to be a massive, like, I don't know,
Well,
journey.
also it's like um what was I going to say?
Mind blank?
Yeah, mind blank. Can't remember.
That's all right.
Mm.
No. Okay. Well, then, so I like the idea of you doing like your degree at ACU, besides the transport
Yeah,
and all
well,
this kind
yeah.
of stuff. It's a good degree, right?
Mm.
Have you applied anywhere else for that kind of degree
Um,
or hoping to go anywhere else for that degree?
I well, I've accepted that ACU offer,
Yeah.
but beforehand, like when it became time to really start searching for the right thing, immediately I was drawn to that because that is the crux of what I want to do long
Yeah.
term. But I was thinking about going to Western Sydney for like the exercise and sports science bit of it.
Because they have a good system out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's easier to get to really.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And the biggest thing for me, sort of, was how easy will it be? Like transport's a massive thing for me,
100%.
and especially if you're going 3 4 days a week.
Yeah. No,
Like
I agree.
that's why I hate the idea of working in the city. If you live out in the western suburbs, having to go into the city every day,
Yeah.
especially peak hour, and no, I can't be
It's
bothered.
too much stress.
When it's just added stress that you don't need in your life. It's
I was said on one of our like first podcasts. I said that if you want to become a lawyer or a doctor or that, like something like where your degree really matters without you get a job, you have to go to Sydney Uni or USW, something a high level, I call it Ivy League college, right? But if you don't want to do that, you want to get a degree to learn the course, or it's not really that big of a deal. Any other uni like ACU, Macquarie,
mm,
I think the biggest factor is transportation
yeah,
because I can go on the metro and go to Macquarie Uni.
yeah, because it's
I
what three
mean,
seconds away.
that isn't just one train. Oh, sorry, one metro. I'm already there.
Mm,
Why would I sacrifice that for somewhat the same degree at another place where I have to catch 3 buses, 2 trains, and a ferry? You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's weird.
It and it all comes back to the cost of living as well.
Yeah,
Petrol is it's not only tolls and everything, it's petrol, it's all
yeah.
that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how they expect uni students to be able to drive to uni and drive back when you can't work during the time you're going to uni. You know what I mean? You
Mm,
can't. You're not working a 9 to 5 to make money to afford your car. That's why you're driving.
mm,
You're actually paying to go somewhere, and you have to drive there as well.
mm. And it's a lose-lose situation for
Yeah,
both the government and citizens because the government has to put the interest rates and inflation up and whatever, so they can recover from all the loss from COVID.
yeah.
And if they don't, the country won't run.
No,
But the country's not running properly anyway because hundreds of thousands of people are going to end up on the streets
yeah,
within the next year or so, and it's quite sad because COVID, it just wasn't. I don't- I- COVID was something that I wasn't particularly sure about for
okay,
the first couple months. I was not. I saw it on the news and stuff, but I just didn't. It didn't fathom to me that it was an actual thing that would affect not only us but the rest of the planet. I thought if it was kept in China,
contain.
then even though China would basically be eradicated, at least it's not
Spreading.
going to the rest of the world.
You didn't think about the actual effect of what it could achieve.
Yeah, because well, at the time, I just thought it was the normal flu or something.
Yeah.
Because it's just normal flu-like symptoms.
Yeah.
'Cause I've never had it.
No. I've never had it. There was times when me and Nicole were both sick and it was like peak of it. But we test like 1,000 times, got
Mm,
nothing. But then, you have people who test like 10 times 0, but then they test one more time the next day. And then it's like,
positive.
so you can't pick it unless you get a proper PCR. And even then, those aren't 100%
Oh
reliable.
yeah, because there was I can't remember what it was. It was like 1 or 2 days after I got the first jab,
Mm-hmm.
and I got tested positive, and I'm like, "Yeah, right, this is gonna be effective. This
Yeah.
vaccine's gonna be
Yeah.
great." Um, but then it wasn't it was a false positive.
Yeah.
So I had the first PCR test said it was positive,
Yeah.
and I had like 2 or 3 after, and then they said they were all negative, and I'm thinking because I was feeling crook as a dog at that
Yeah.
time as well, so I thought, if I did have COVID, then good, I can just get it over and done with now
Yeah.
because 'cause I've only just 2 days ago had the jab,
Yeah.
so it should still be really sort of big in my system.
Yeah.
It'll kill it off in 2 or 3 days, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I didn't have it in the first place, so there was nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Now, Matthew, talk to me about your origin story, your Batman story. Like what got you to what you are today?
Um,
Tell me everything.
a lot of beatings. No,
No.
no. So I grew up as an only child.
Yep.
Um, so my mum and dad were together until I was about 4.
Yep.
Um, and my grandparents, we had a great, well, we still have got a great sort of situation. So at the time, it was my mum, my dad, and myself, and then the house behind were my mum's parents.
Yep.
Right. Because my dad's from the UK, all his families over
Over
the other
there.
side of the planet.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, um, my dad had a previous marriage and had 3 kids,
Yep.
and I didn't really know them up until a couple months ago.
Wow. Okay.
Um, they're in their early to mid 30s now because he was quite a bit old, but
Yeah.
either or. And yeah, just a very sort of basic sort of growing up,
Lovely.
Yeah, there was nothing overly massive that sort of shaped who I was. It was sort of just um, hopefully getting taught the right lessons from
Right people.
from the right people. Like, um, but yeah, knowing that my dad had been a dad previously, he sort of knew exactly what to say in different situations, and he sort of um, I don't know. He just knew what to do
Yeah.
when it mattered.
Yeah.
Um, and he was more like the hard sort of because he was born in the early 50s.
Yeah.
So he was like the really old school
Yeah.
sort of
The
thinking.
tough. Yeah. 100%.
Whereas my mum's like the really sort of emotional type person.
Yeah.
So, and I wouldn't say I'm emotional at all. So I think I've got most of that from dad.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, like, growing up, used to play different sports like soccer and tennis and cricket
Yeah, because
and
I was going to my next point because I knew that you did a lot of sports,
mm,
specifically baseball. Is that correct?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's that's the one that I really had a passion for, and I had to sort of give up over the past 18 months because of injury. But
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, it's really actually just quite a basic sort of life story. There was nothing really anything that sort of I didn't have any major traumatic events or anything that happened.
No.
It was sort of just a basic sort of lifestyle in Western Sydney
Hey,
sort of thing.
that's the best lifestyle to have. I think about all the different views of like, people living like, in the city and then they have like the eastern suburbs and all these kind of things. And then like I drive past the houses and they'll go to their like fancy schools and their fancy houses. And I'm just like, I've got no need for that. I love where I'm at.
Yeah.
I love that I'm allowed to be who I am whenever I can. Like I don't need to I don't need to be able to have to impress anybody
Mm.
about trying to say, "Well, I go to this school, I go to that school." I'm like, "I go to my school." Like,
Yeah, we don't care. We
you
just
got a problem with that? Like,
yeah.
I'm happy with who I am, you know,
Mm.
and that's good. And I've got one question I wanted to ask you, and it's gonna be a very short topic, I think. Would you rather? Oh, sorry. Do you like mullets or no?
I was actually gonna get one yesterday, but
Yeah.
I decided not to. I don't know. There are some that are alright on certain people.
On certain,
It
yep,
it it dep
100%
it depends
agree.
on the person.
Yep, 100% agree.
But there are some like, those ones that like,
Got
just the
no-
straight ones that go down to their
I know exactly what you mean. It's the waterfall where it's
yeah, the one
just
that goes to the bottom of their
boosh, and then
backs.
it's 0 on the
Yeah,
side. Yep.
I hate that.
Nah.
But the ones that are actually sort of, like, styled and something on a certain person, I don't mind. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it myself.
Nah.
Um, but yeah, I was thinking about it just as sort of, why not?
Yeah.
'Cause I've never had one, so I thought, why not? I might as well just do it. But I
Of
thought,
course.
no, it's a waste of time. I'm
Yeah.
gonna shave it off anyway. So
Because my dad's a military man, like previous, hasn't
mm,
done it in a long time, but he's very strict on a lot of things. That's why every time I talk to someone, I say, "Hello, sir," and like my haircut has to be a certain way and everything, just because he's grown up with those kind of values from a young age. Because he
mm.
went to the Navy when he was 15, right? So every time I mention, or every time he sees one of my mates with a full mullet, he just cringes the absolute lord. And I got my hair cut like, I don't know, like maybe what, 2 days ago? I got it on Tuesday. I got, I think, a 1 to 2 fade on the side and the back. And my dad's like, "What is that haircut? That's too short. You look like yeah, it's like looks like there's a mop on your head." I'm
Yeah,
like, I've been always wondering if I want to get a mullet because of that. Like I want to.
you'd probably get your head ripped off.
Oh, I definitely would. Like, there's no way that they'll disown me. Even though I'm 18, they'll disown me from that.
Well, there was a couple of years ago. I just went full, like nothing, right? Just full buzz cut,
Yeah, buzz cut. Yeah.
right? Dad turned around to me and said, "You look like a convict."
Oh my gosh. Exactly. They just don't like.
And
They don't care.
well, to be fair, I didn't like it either. But yeah, no, he was always very um judgmental
Yeah.
on haircuts, like even his own, because he sort of had like the reverse mullet sort of thing. He had no hair up until like the very back of his head, and then he
Oh, like a skullet kind of thing.
sort of, but
Yeah.
it's just the fact that he just could not. You can't really see it, but like he had no hair on the top,
But then he had hair on the side.
but that
Yeah.
he had all hair down the back and sides,
Yeah.
just because he couldn't grow anything on the top. He used to have before he came to Australia, he had this sort of like the old Beatle haircut.
Yeah.
Just think that, but about 4 or 5 times longer.
Really.
Yeah, like it was like
A lot
down
of hair, like
yeah,
full and everything. And then
yeah,
he went bald.
yeah. I don't know whether I don't know whether it was natural or whether he just shaved it off and just couldn't grow it back.
Yeah, maybe
But,
that could have been that.
and he always, borderline hated the idea of me getting a haircut of any sort. He's just like, "Just grow it out." It's like, "You've got the hair available to you, just grow it out." And I'm like, "No, I don't wanna look like a beetle in 2022."
I guess when, they can't grow hair, they're trying to tell you you might not have it for the next couple of years, like, so might as well, like,
Yeah, you might.
keep it going.
Yeah,
Because my poppy, because your hair comes from your mum's side, I think it says, or I don't know where it
I
says.
don't know I don't
But
know how it works.
my poppy's, like, bald on top, very couple hairs on the side, right? And then it's supposed to be that I'm supposed to be go bald now because I get my hair from that side. My brother, he's had a lot of hair. He's starting to get bald, like, he's trying to get a little bit thin on the top, and Nicole's like, "You're not gonna go bald, your hair's, like, so thick." I'm like, "Just accept it, okay? Just accept it. It's gonna happen. Just accept it and move on." Like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I'm not fighting against it. Like, it just
Oh, well, at the end of the day, you can't do much about it
exactly. Like,
unless you wanna go down the hair transplant route, but
uh,
I don't
unless I'm making $1 million a year, I don't wanna spend a lot of money on surgery to get a hair
well,
transplant.
not only that, but I wouldn't do it unless my hair was what made me famous or what made me money.
True. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Like, like, that's why I'm saying, like, The Rock was talking about how he works out, like, 4, 5 hours a day,
Yeah.
and I'm like, to anyone else, except for like those strongmen or someone like The Rock, it's absurd. You don't do
Don't
that.
do that.
But at the end of the day, that his body is what made him famous.
If he loses that,
If
it's
he
not.
loses that, he's got nothing else.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, that's fair enough. But for hair,
Yeah.
seriously.
So I just want to link one thing. Your sport and exercise route for your uni degree, is that linking because you were an athlete? Because you did participate in baseball things. Was it like nationally or was it internationally, baseball?
International.
International, yep.
Um, yeah, I think I was just saying to Nicole before, the psychology route of it.
Yeah.
That's something I've always wanted to do.
Okay.
No idea why. It's just something that
Pops in your head.
I don't know whether you watched it or not, but there was a kids' TV show on like Disney Channel or whatever it was. It was the talking dog with the like it was a real life thing, but it
Okay.
was like a
Talking dog, yeah.
with I can't, if I knew it. His name was Stan or something.
Okay.
And the dad of the family was a psychologist, and
Yeah.
he was a child psychologist. And I started watching that, and I thought, "Oh, that's actually quite cool. Like, I'd want to sort of get into that." But then, as I grew older, and the more I disliked kids,
Yeah.
I thought, keep the psychology bit, go down a different route.
Yeah. 100%.
So that's why I'm trying to go down like the sports psychology side of things.
Yeah.
And then the exercise and sports science bit is basically just um, like the physical rehabilitation sort of thing.
Of
Because
course.
for me, and I've been taught this from like 9 or 10, if you're not mentally ready for competition, you're not physically ready.
Yeah.
And if you're not physically ready, you're not mentally ready.
They both go hand in hand.
So for me, ideally, I'd like to do both.
Yeah.
And be able to do two things that I really enjoy and have a passion for, but also it's good for the employer because I don't have to employ two different people for the same job.
No, you're absolutely right. If you're qualified for both and you can do both at a good standard, they
And
can give you 1.5 more money and then they'd have to pay twice. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
I like that word. I like
But
that idea.
it's also like COVID's taught me that you need to be able to have different routes to go down
That's actually
because
smart. Yeah.
if you don't have options and you rely on one thing,
I think
if this sort of thing was to happen again, like my mum, for example, she's in the TV industry.
Yeah.
Right. During COVID, like during like the massive lockdown, TV wasn't needed.
Right.
Like realistically, you could just like replay stuff, except for like morning like
the
TV
morning
host
shows and stuff like
whatever.
that. Yeah.
Like nothing else was really put to air because, well, if they were put to air, they were made like 6 months before COVID even started.
Yeah.
Whereas during COVID, there was nothing. Whereas for me personally, if I was to go down like the health route, either an exercise physiologist or a psychologist or whatever, they're going to be needed.
Yeah.
Like no matter
They have
what.
to be
Like if anything, psychologists were needed more during COVID than anything.
because they needed people to talk about their
Yeah.
experiences and everything. Yeah. Of
So
course.
not necessarily the fact that I think COVID's going to come back or anything, but if something of that nature was to come back or something was to just randomly happen
Yeah.
and we've got nothing to do and work's been shut down or whatever, at least people within the healthcare industry is going to have some sort of opportunity to
Yeah.
get some sort of work because it's not like it's like GPs. GPs were getting paid like nearly twice as much money during COVID because they were nearly the only ones that were working.
Yeah.
Whereas, TV industry, construction, all that was shut down.
Yeah.
So that's why, for me personally, I've always wanted to go down the health route, not because I knew COVID was coming, but it was just it gives me more and more opportunity to get work in the poorest circumstance possible.
Yeah.
And COVID showed
So
that.
it's naive to think that something like that can't happen again. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. But like the chances of it, like, we hadn't had a big thing like that since the bubonic plague.
Yeah.
Which was in what, like the 30s or something?
I think the thing they showed us was in 1820s there was a plague, 1830. Sorry, no, the 1820s, the 1920s, and then the 2020s. So it's like
Oh.
it's like every 100
Yeah,
years,
right.
something like one of them happen again.
Well, I'll be retired by then.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Hopefully.
Um, yeah, no, I only signed out of school yesterday
Yeah.
because I had to bring back books and whatever that I'd borrowed from the library and whatever. I didn't know that you had to. I don't know whether you had to do it, but did you have to go to all your teachers and like your year advisor and everything and get them to sign a piece of paper?
No, because I didn't all my stuff is, virtual, so I never had a physical,
Right.
but, Nicole, did you have to do anything like that? That's so weird. Why do you have
Oh,
to do that?
well, my original thinking was that you just go into the office. They'd be like, "Yep, all ticked off. You sign. You go home."
Yeah, you give the books, you sign away, you go away, like
But you had to go to all your teachers, the head teachers for those faculties. Because I'm at a sports school, I had to go to the sports
yeah,
coordinator thing,
yeah,
and I spent 3 hours there.
yeah,
I'm like, "It shouldn't be that complicated,
yeah.
really." Um, but yeah, school school was a weird one for me.
Talk to me about that.
So I started at just a local primary school in
Yeah,
Layla Park,
yeah,
and um, then I moved to Rousel Anglican College.
yep,
That was from year 3 to the end of year 8,
okay.
and then I'm not gonna bag bag them out or anything, so I won't say anything. But then I went to the Hill Sports High School,
Yeah,
which is where I ended up graduating, and for me, that was a culture shock because I'd been so used to going to a devout Christian school where you had to be
oh, you
cloned.
have to yeah,
Like, they basically cloned you. You had to have the same haircut. You had if you didn't have the same like, if you didn't have the school socks on, you'd get a detention.
yeah, a lot of that kinda stuff,
Like
yeah,
and, chapel, like, 3 times a day, and it was just a bit much.
yeah,
You go to a school like that where it's a selective school, but it's also just a normal state school,
yeah,
and you've got people of all ethnicities, you've got and I'm like, I actually really enjoy it
yeah,
because you really are just put in bubble wrap at a school like that because you don't get to experience other cultures,
absolutely right.
whereas at Hills, a lot of the, well, the majority of the, students are in the rugby league program,
Yeah,
and most, like, I'd say 95% of them are, Pacific Islander,
yeah,
where at, Rouse Hill, if you weren't, white with blue eyes, blonde hair, you weren't accepted.
yeah,
So, with a school like that, it really sort of broadened my horizons to be like, you know, learning about different cultures is always good.
yeah,
Um, and it was really interesting because there was one bloke in particular, can't remember his name, but he was I think he, I think his brother or something passed away, and he did like this sort of presentation thing in the hall, like only a couple days after the funeral. So he was obviously really
upset,
upset,
yeah, of course.
and because they're Kiwi, they did the whole haka thing.
Yeah,
Because I'd never seen it in person before. I'd only ever seen it on like TV and stuff.
yeah,
And so he started, and then all of his friends, because for like death and whatever, it's all the same haka for everyone.
yeah,
So when he started, all of his friends joined in,
yeah,
and then it just and like nearly like the whole school, because most of them are
Pacific Islander,
Pacific Islander. They all basically joined in,
yeah,
and me personally, I was getting emotional. I'm just like the fact that these people that don't even know him can come together
yeah,
and do something, do a cultural sort of traditional goodbye for him.
yeah,
I thought it was awesome,
yeah,
and I didn't get to experience that at my previous school,
yeah,
but I, I, I don't know what it is. I just think because I've traveled a bit of the world and I've learned to really sort of delve deep into a lot of different sort of cultures and whatever.
yeah,
Um, and when you travel, you gain a broader understanding, but also you gain a lot of respect for that culture.
Yeah.
So it's like the Japanese, they are devout with their culture. Like you do something wrong and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But I find that great
Yeah.
because, well, I think it's more not necessarily a cultural thing, but just like a national sort of thing. Like you portray your country, especially in a place like that. You're in
Deep
deep,
water.
deep water.
Yeah.
Um, but that's why for me, going to a school with such diversity was always like from the day I went to the day I finished was great. Like literally yesterday when I was signing out, um, the I think it was the year 11 and the new year 12 footy boys were practicing their haka before their next game,
Yeah.
and there were like 40 of them, and I'm thinking this is awesome.
Yeah.
I love it, and even when I'm watching, like rugby union or something on the TV, and the All Blacks do that, I'm like, this is awesome. And
Yeah.
then when you get the crowd getting involved as well, that's even better.
I've
And
seen all like the TikToks where it's like all the schoolboy, like the what is it, the rugby tournaments or the rugby union or whatever, right? But, like when they're in New Zealand, they have like the massive stands of like they're like just like I think like stone stands, of, like maybe like 30 stands, right? And they're all a bunch of schoolboys and like they're like suits and like everything. And then one person starts the haka in the middle, and then the
the
whole
whole thing,
stands
yeah,
go and they all scream and they're all like they're like war cry, just like incredible.
yeah,
Like
and witnessing that firsthand for the first time, and especially knowing that sort of occasion, like knowing that it was about someone who's passed,
yeah,
that was not only sort of eye opening for because that's the first time I've really actually experienced that side of their culture
yeah,
in person. Not only that, but I just was gobsmacked that like three quarters of the school got involved,
yeah,
and it was like no matter whether you were fighting with another person or something, like personal feelings doesn't come anywhere near to cultural
no,
belief.
of course not.
And I found that great because I went to a Christian school, but I'm not necessarily religious.
Okay.
And I haven't been basically since I left.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not I wouldn't say I'm a Christian, but I live the Christian life,
Of course. Yeah.
Um, and I find, um, I find that being able to live your life the way you want to live it, but
Yeah.
also have respect for other people and how they live their lives. It's just how I was brought up,
Yeah.
and it's the way that everyone should be brought up, really. But then you get some people, especially in the States, you've got all this racism and everything going on, and it's especially at the moment, it's it's shambles over there.
Yeah.
One of my mates just went over there for a holiday, and I said, I would genuinely be surprised if you came back.
It's just too much.
It
It's too much.
well, the night of Halloween, they had 3 mass shootings at the same time
Yeah.
in 3 different states. All the shooters were wearing Mike Myers rubbish. Over 120 people were killed.
I know.
I'm like, "What a why?"
Yeah.
It I don't know. It's
There's a lot of cultural problems. We'll put it that way. There's a lot of cultural problems over there where it's just the attitudes to certain things.
well, when we had that Port Arthur massacre, and
Yeah.
then John Howard brought in that buyback policy, that was perfect because we haven't had a
Nothing.
mass shooting since. I
No.
guess you could call the Lint Cafe siege one, but that's not really a mass shooting, it's more a terrorist attack, but I think I was watching some podcast and, um, some Aussie bloke was getting interviewed by these American blokes, and they were like, "We know about the Port Arthur thing, and we know about the buyback policy and whatever, but, like, sort of explain it in more detail." And then after this bloke explained it, the Americans were like, "It's such a good idea, but the logistics of it working over here is impossible."
Yeah.
Because then you've got to change the constitution, you've got to change all this, all that, and it's just like the problem is so big, but there are millions of people over there that either don't care or they're just too patriotic about being able to
Own a
own
firearm.
a gun. And I think Australia did the right thing
Yeah.
doing it immediately
Yeah.
because I think it was literally like 2 or 3 weeks after it happened. The whole thing just stopped.
Yeah.
But you get all these stories of school shootings and mass shootings in Las Vegas or whatever, and they don't do anything about it. I don't know whether it's
I truly believe because of uh, America's so much bigger than Australia, right? And it's like so much those different states and southern states who are full of people who pride themselves in having the guns and being patriotic and all those kind of things. It's an act of patriotism, and it's and I also believe Australia's like idea is just like, all right, like we'll move on then, like like something bad happens, all right, we'll fix it, move on. Like, but America, it's more about
and
symbol of patriotism.
it's and it's significantly more difficult for the US because they really, for the most part, they really don't have like an actual federal government because they all do it based off their states.
Yeah,
So you get states like Texas and stuff. They can do whatever they want in their state because, except for really like the president and like the few people below him, they can't really do anything to them. Whereas the federal government in Australia can do anything to each state
yeah,
with agreements of the state leaders.
of course.
But that's the thing. Like Joe Biden wants to do like the same sort of thing with guns over there that we did over here, but it's impossible because you're gonna have states like Texas and all that sort of stuff that just won't give in.
Yeah.
And it's gotta be a unanimous vote. It can't just be a majority. So it's like it's just
You
it's
know,
impossible.
and there's another big reason why it's not going to happen, right? Is because if I give you my gun, I want to make sure that that guy with the gun's not going to shoot me. But I'm going to make sure I need to protect myself from that guy who's going to shoot me. So I need my gun. So you need everyone to do it at the same time. So like it's like showing all your cards. You don't want someone to be left empty-handed, so that someone will. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? That's like I was watching this just border security, right? Like I love watching
Love
that
that
stuff.
show.
Love it. But it was from America, right? It was like some kind of whatever, right? It was actually no, it was actually the border from Canada and America, right? Like they drove in the wrong way, like, oh my bad, right? They had to open their car and they're like, do you have any firearms? I'm like, yeah, we got three. And it's a mum and a dad with their baby child. And they're like, okay, where's the gun? One in my pocket. All right, fair. Boom. Second one. Oh, there's another one in my bottom of my sock. Okay. Boom. Next one. Where's the other one? Oh, it's in the nappy bag in the baby carousel. I'm just like, uh, sorry, is that a
Is that
legitimate
normal?
threat? Is that like, do I need to carry a 5 millimeter in my like little like nappy bag? Like the idea of it is just
Well, it's just so next world sort of thing,
yeah,
like compared to what we call normal life.
yeah.
Like they call that normal life because they've been doing it all their life, and it's
It's
just
normal to them,
well, something
exactly.
they've been doing for 400 or 500 years.
Yeah.
Whereas us, we just like to live an actual normal life.
Mm,
Whereas you know the fit, I don't think, especially now that we've just graduated,
yeah.
I don't think that if I wouldn't go to school if I thought that I'd be in danger of getting shot every day.
So right. That's actually a legitimate risk. You
Like,
wouldn't put yourself out there for certain
no,
things.
like
No.
I don't care whether I'm in kindergarten or year 12. I'd be I'd be asking to get homeschooled
Yeah.
because you see the amount that like just the amount of attacks that happen. You just it's not a matter of if, but when your school or whatever's going to get attacked because it
Exactly.
happens so often. I just wouldn't put myself out there. I'd
You try and stay under the radar and just
yeah.
I 100% agree. Like if I actually had to fear for that kind of stuff, right? Like I wouldn't be on the stage talking about certain things that people call me names for like talking about certain shit. I don't care. Like I've learned how to deal with that, right? But if I actually had to deal with that risk of someone not liking what I said about something and then potentially
Putting a gun to your head.
what's the worst that could happen now? Like with added that factor, like you're not gonna have anybody giving their 100% to anything.
No, no, I especially knowing that baseball is a big American sport,
Yeah.
I was thinking, is it really worth going over there? Because at the time I was really thinking about this, I didn't know whether I was going to actually put myself forward into that sort of situation where I could get scouted by
Yeah.
scouts and whatever. But I was just thinking the pros and cons. I was thinking, is it worth living over there, away from family, everything I've got over here,
Yeah.
for it potentially not to work out? And then
So much money.
I've spent not only money, I've spent time away from family, I've spent all this, all that, and I thought, knowing that, like, the potential of it not working, the ratios were just too out of it, and I thought, "Nah, I'm staying here and I'll just figure out something else."
Yeah.
But I think it's when anyone plays a sport, I think their goal is to become professional, right? But baseball was the one that really sort of got me
Hooked.
really invested.
Yeah.
I think because I was also getting a bit older as well, so that the actual possibility of it happening
Was
was,
right then and
yeah.
there, about to happen, if
Whereas
anything.
if I was playing soccer when I was like 5, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a soccer player, but then
It gives a
6, 7 years later, I haven't played it in 2 or 3 years, and I've never thought about it since.
yeah.
So, um, but yeah, I was real because I always think about the big picture,
Yeah.
future, like long term future, short term future. I thought if I was to actually pursue this and go over there, is it worth it?
Yeah.
And it took like 2 or 3 weeks, like nearly every day, talking to my mum and dad, and I was just like, "Nah, it really isn't worth it."
Yeah.
Like there was a there was a team like New South Wales based team that were going to the States, which I had got into, but it we were supposed to leave, I think, a week before this whole COVID thing hit Australia,
Okay.
and in looking back on it, it's probably a good thing we didn't go because we would have been over there for 2.5 years.
Yeah. You've been locked in there for a
Yeah,
while. Yeah.
because like even if you were an Australian citizen, you couldn't board a plane
No.
for like a year,
No.
and there's no way I'm staying in America for a year when I don't have to.
Nope. Exactly.
So I was just like, that was a great opportunity as well because that was like a sort of like a mini World Cup sort of thing. So
Okay.
all sorts of scouts and whatever would be there. But I thought, well, because this was when like COVID had like just gone right through China, but hadn't really gone anywhere else. And then we were supposed to leave, and then we started to hear news about it hitting Australia and especially the US.
Yeah.
And normally my mum makes the decisions, but my dad was just like, "You're not going over there."
Yeah.
It's just, not only is it a risk for us not having you here for a year and the worries that would come from that, but you wouldn't want to stay over there for a year when you don't have to.
Yeah.
So looking back, it was a great option. Like it was a great decision, but at the time, I was devastated because
I can
I
imagine.
was like, this was like my one big sort of opportunity, and then COVID ruins it, and I'm like, oh,
In perspective, though, it's not just like, of course, this could have changed everything. Maybe let's just say hypothetically could have, but as well as every person who could have gone to that tournament couldn't go. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
they couldn't.
yeah,
So that means that all those people couldn't do it. So it's like it kind of helps. Not it kind of helps saying like even if you didn't do it, no one
yeah,
else could have as
yeah.
well.
It's not like I was the only one that missed out, sort of thing.
Exactly, right?
Yeah,
It's like, and then everything else, like then the people watching couldn't watch. They had to find other outlets. Just everything. Now, another question I want to ask you: what do you think is a good way for people in Australia to be acknowledged for professional sports in America? Like, do you think social media is a very big factor, or do you think those physical tournaments of going to places are the best way to do it?
to get into teams for Australia,
Yeah,
it's who you know,
yeah,
especially in baseball. The politics in baseball is unbelievable.
yeah,
It's who you know, not what. It's who you know, not what you know. You could be the best player on the team, but if you don't know people higher up in the order, you've got no chance.
yeah,
So really, um, like nearly all year round, there are not only like international tournaments, but there's like showcases that that are held in Australia, but like minor league and major league club scouts come out for to do all sorts of testing, like throw speed, hitting,
All that stuff. Yeah, yeah,
all that sort of stuff. And that's probably the easier. Well, not that it's easy to get into it in the first place, but that's probably the most advantageous thing. Is not necessarily make a team that goes overseas, but just do something in your hometown
yeah.
where um, I think there's one next week actually. There's like a they call it the MLB showcase. So
Okay.
it's somewhere in Sydney. They go all around the country and basically it's like there's 40 teams in the MLB. And I think normally between 25 and 30 scouts from those teams and then another 10 or 15 um from like minor league teams
Yeah,
would go to these things and just to assess like how good they are.
yeah,
And this is the best way to do it if you don't know the people higher up,
yeah.
because the scouts don't know anyone from a bar of soap.
No.
So it's really just based off raw talent.
Yeah,
So if you've got the talent, you'll do well. Whereas if try and do like a New South Wales team or try and make an Australian team or whatever, because especially in Australia, the baseball community is so tight knit. If you don't know people around, you've got no chance.
yeah,
So it not that I used it to a I should have in hindsight, but I didn't because I just didn't want to be like that. But I don't actually know how she's related, but someone related to me is one of the biggest people in Australian baseball.
yeah.
And I could be like, if I was that much of a pain in the,
But yeah,
I'd be like, um, just get me in the team.
yeah,
But I don't do that because I'd like to think that I'm reasonably talented enough anyway to get in.
yeah,
So I just do it based off that. And if I get in, I get in. If I don't, I don't.
yeah,
I don't try and use people's status to get up there, which some people have, and I've seen it firsthand. And
yeah,
like it shows when they actually like compete. You've got, especially when I went over a couple of years ago, you've got all the best players in the world really for our age group, and then you've got people who have used people higher up in the order to get into that team, and then you just see the performance gap between the rest of the team that actually made the team because of their performance, and then just people who got in because they know people.
yeah.
And it's I wouldn't say that it'd be well, it's the wrong thing to do really, because you're not only taking people who actually deserve it away just because you know like the coach or the selector or whatever, but you're gonna make a fool of yourself when you actually play. And I I, I don't know. It just doesn't appeal to me. It's like if you know you're not good enough, just work harder to get in next year or whenever.
Don't use different status. Don't use different stuff to get into those
Well,
kind
yeah,
of
because
fields.
you're just gonna make a fool of yourself.
Yeah,
If you can't play at that sort of level, you get put into a team like that, and then you play against, some of the best players on the planet.
yeah.
You're not gonna do well, and everyone's gonna think, why was he
Why is
put
this
in
kid in this
yeah,
team? Yeah,
in the first place? And I like I could have very easily just been like, I know you're related, put me in.
yeah.
There was no point for me because I thought I had enough confidence in myself to be able to do it pure through
Talent,
talent,
skill, and just absolute ability. Yeah,
not through saying, "Yep, I know you, put me in the team."
yeah,
Because I think I've got more self-respect than that. Because if I knew I wasn't good enough, I wouldn't want to make a fool of myself
yeah,
on the field.
yeah,
So I'm like, well, if I'm genuinely not good enough based off my pure ability, then that's fine. Don't pick me.
yeah,
But I don't want you to pick me because I know you or you or you or you. And it's happened so many times, and I feel I feel bad for the people that miss out, but I also feel bad for the person who did it because they've literally just made a fool of themselves in front of scouts, coaches from other sides of the world, all this sort of stuff. And especially in America, it doesn't matter who you know in Australia,
Yeah.
they don't have any connections to
Of course,
America.
no, nothing.
So if if you don't perform in a place like America, then
There's
it
no
doesn't matter
point.
who you know in Australia, you're not going to get picked anyway.
Yeah,
If you play well in a place like America, you get noticed. If you don't, and you're in the squad anyway, the selectors and the scouts and everything would be wondering why you're in the squad in the first place.
100%.
So, and yeah, at the end of the day, I pride myself off being able to actually perform.
Yeah.
And if my performance and my 100% isn't good enough, then there you go. It's not good enough. But
It
at least I've actually tried. And
yeah,
if I'm in, I'm in, and I'll celebrate and I'll do the best I can. But if I don't, then that's fine.
yeah.
Some people are so caught up with just trying to have the status of being an Australian representative or a New South Wales representative or whatever, then they'll do anything to get in. I'm like, it's just not. Having that status isn't worth being humiliated when you don't have that sort of skill level.
100% agree.
But I've seen it so many times, and it's actually quite funny. But it's
There's some kind of politics when it comes to basketball, when it comes to private school basketball things, right? Like, I've seen it from, like, I ref and I coach and I ref all these young talent through all the tournaments through BNSW and states and all this kind of stuff, right? And there's some incredible talent, right? But you can also tell that sometimes certain schools and certain places promote certain talent when reality is it's not. It's more about their status as a player than their actual ability.
mm,
It might be good, it might be great, but there's no one looking at the Western Sydney kind of side of basketball, like the people who wake up every day early before they go to school, before they go to the normal state school and they play basketball in the morning, and they only have one chance to show off their talent at a gala day once a year that no one watches and no one cares about.
mm,
It's like there needs to be a better way to showcase talent sometimes. Like paying for representative fees for basketball and doing all these things sometimes cannot happen for certain people. And I really wish there's some way that people can look at talent and see that kid's got something raw, maybe we can work on that. But like at the end of the day, if you have the right financial thing or the right status, you put your kid through the right course and then they have the best chance.
mm.
So
Well, financials are also like a massive thing
massive thing.
because you could be the best on the entire team, but if you go overseas and if you can't afford the plane ticket and
Exactly.
accommodation stuff, can't go, then
100%.
it's a wasted opportunity for someone who could really make it big.
Yeah.
Because there was one kid that made it into the Australian squad with me, and I think his parents were just going through a divorce or something, and money just wasn't available.
No.
He was arguably one of the best players I've ever seen. Couldn't go because he couldn't afford it.
See, those things just affects it really badly.
Yeah, and I find it like we ended up trying to like fundraise and stuff to get him over there because we knew, not necessarily for a team perspective, but we knew that if he was to go over there, he'd get picked up by someone
Yeah.
because he was that good.
Yeah.
Quickest bloke I've ever seen. Fields brilliantly. He arguably the best pitcher I've ever faced ever.
Yeah.
He is literally an all rounder and a very good all rounder. And I think it was like the whole fee, like for accommodation, whatever, it was like 8.5. We raised 10,
Yeah.
so we paid for him, and then we gave him the other 1,500. Just why not?
Yeah.
Like do it, buy yourself some shoes or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I've seen it so many times, especially when either you go interstate or international or whatever. The financial side of things is what literally breaks people
Yeah.
because
I 100%
you,
agree.
you could genuinely be like the best player, like best thing since sliced bread. You can't afford to go over there
Yeah.
unless the people around you have some sort of initiative like we did and actually tried fundraising and to because at the end of the day, we as a team wouldn't have put ourselves through that much effort and problem if we didn't think that he was worth something.
Yeah.
And not only was it good for us because he was our best player for the team, but then 2 weeks later after we came home, he got an email from one of the scouts saying, "Do you wanna come over?" So it was very lucky that we actually were able to get him over there because if not, he wouldn't have been picked up by anyone.
Can you talk to me about what happened after that? So you got the email and
So one of the senior scouts for the Florida Gators, I'm sorry,
that's all right.
um, he that's a college over there,
Yeah, actually, yeah.
and he got this head scout or whatever sent him an email just saying you like we really see something in you because at the time he was only 15,
Yeah.
so for a college sort of thing you'd really still be having to wait another 2 or 3 years. So um when he got the email he thought it was just like a scam thing because he's like, I'm 15. Normally like colleges and stuff aren't until you're 18 sort of thing, so like, why are you why are you talking to me 3 years in advance?
Yeah.
um and he only read half the email and thought it was a piece of rubbish, and I thought, "Just read the whole," because I read it, but I didn't wanna tell him through me, I wanted
Well,
him
you
to read it,
experience it, yeah.
and basically, he said, "We've got a we've got an under 18s sort of academy sort of thing that we want you to be a part of," and because he thought it was a load of rubbish, he didn't he didn't read that bit, but I'm like, "No, this is legit. I saw this fella when we were over there. I know he's a real person.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
just read it properly,
Yeah.
understand what's going on,
Yeah.
and see what happens." And so he still didn't believe it. And I'm like, "What else do you want? Like, you've literally got one of the most influential scouts in the in the world of baseball wanting you. You're not going to take it? Are you serious?" He ended up taking it,
Good.
and uh, because he was very money poor at the time, he was like, "Well, I could barely afford to get over there for the tournament. How am I supposed to live over there?"
Yeah.
All of it was paid for on a scholarship,
Oh my gosh.
and I'm like, "Well, there you go."
There you go.
It was 3 years of 4 days a week training, and now he's arguably one of the hottest prospects to go into the country into the major leagues now.
Holy, like that's incredible.
So, and he's what, he was 6 months older than me, so it'd be about 18 and a half,
Yeah.
and he's basically been guaranteed a start in the starting major league squad next season.
It's incredible. What's his name?
I don't know his last name
Yeah.
because it really
Was a
was
long time ago. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
First name's Cameron.
Okay.
Can't it was like an Italian last name, can't remember his
That's
last name.
right.
But,
When we see the draft or when we see something and we find out who it is and you text me and you find out, we'll make sure we're like, we recognize him first. I was his best friend. You were the second best friend. We are best friends for baseball.
yeah, and I am, and he deserves it. He's
It
worked
really does.
he's worked his ass off for years,
Yeah.
and like I only started baseball when I was 11, so
Yeah.
I was a reasonably late sort of starter to it because normally, because it's a summer sport, you play baseball as a young kid or like t-ball into baseball
Yeah.
during the summer, and then you can play soccer or whatever in the winter,
Mhm.
right? But because I was playing other sports all year round,
Yeah.
I didn't have enough time for baseball until I started really focusing on it, and I thought this is something I could see myself doing long term.
Yeah.
So from about 11 until a year ago or so, that was like that was my life. That was what I did nearly every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, this kid, he started when he was like he started through T-ball, so he would have been about 4 or 5 then.
Yeah.
And by the time he was 11, he went to an under 12s World Cup, MVP there, like not
Jeez.
not only for the team but for the whole tournament.
Yeah.
And after that, we thought this kid's going to be something. If he keeps it up,
Yeah.
he's going to. By the time legally allowed to be, he'll be in the MLB
Yeah.
quick as anything. And then we got him to that tournament over in America, and then he was. I don't think no, he didn't get the MVP for that, but he should have.
Yeah.
I didn't watch all the games and all the players and whatever, but he is literally a generational talent. You're not. He is.
Yeah.
It's something about him because he's got the genetics, but also the skill.
Yeah.
Like he's got the ability to run insanely quick. He's got that hand-eye coordination that
Yeah.
only a certain people. Because when you're having a baseball thrown 95 mile an hour at you, he's a consistent home run hitter.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm good. I'm not that good. He's tiny. He's only like 5'8", 5'9",
Yeah.
and he's crushing baseballs like 450 feet. And I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
How that small body can run fast, but also has that amount of power to hit
Yeah.
it nearly 500 feet.
Yeah.
It, he will literally, if he doesn't flop, I could see him becoming one of the all-time greats.
Really.
Yeah, in 15 years, I could see him if he keeps up and works his slot off.
Yeah.
He'll be up there.
What are the kind of contracts that are for an MLB player, like money wise? It's because I think basketball's top, but I think it follows by baseball.
Yeah. So there was a guy who I played a season with just at club level.
Yeah.
His name's Solomon Maguire.
Okay.
He, I think it was about 18 months ago, signed a pro contract with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Okay.
He was only 17 at the time.
Yeah.
His contract was for 2 years at, I think it was 1.2 a year US
Yeah.
for a 17-year-old.
Yeah, that's bloody incredible. Yeah.
But he was another one that, we knew something was gonna happen with him. We knew he was gonna be something. It's just well, his dad was the president of the club as well. So not only did he have that insane talent,
Yeah.
but he also knew people as well.
Yeah.
Which is fine because he ended up getting there. And
if you have the talent,
Well,
then
yeah.
you use the status to get further, so you can show off your talent. So it works.
Yeah. You've got to have both. You can't just have one.
No, you have to have both.
Unless
Unless you're like a full prodigy, like Michael Jordan of baseball.
But yeah, no, I think he's just playing because what really it is. So it's like you've got the MLB, so you've got the top 40 actual MLB teams, and then for each team you've got like a sort of like a feeder club. So like for example, with Penrith, you've got the Penrith Junior Academy,
Yeah.
and then like at St George, you've got the Illawarra Steelers and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that they're not necessarily in the same city. They can be anywhere throughout the states.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what Pittsburgh's is, but the LA Dodgers one, for example, is in Tulsa,
Yeah.
which is over the other side of the country.
Yeah, that's
So, but there's 3 stages. So you got college, right? They're just the colleges, and they don't have any affiliation to any minor league or major league clubs.
No.
Then you've got 2 brands of minor league.
okay.
So you've got double A, and I think double A is easier to get into. Just think of the battery. It's a bigger battery, so it can fit more people in.
Okay.
Triple A is a smaller battery, so less people
People.
can get in,
Yeah.
and then you've got the MLB. So he's currently in the Triple A, but still playing for 1.2 mil a season, which, I don't care whether I'm playing in the big leagues or not. I'm getting 1.2.
1.2 a year
Yeah.
from playing a sport you love.
Yeah.
Like, that's
I couldn't
incredible.
think of anything better. But especially in baseball, it's hard to be recognized. So unless you really do know people and people not only that are high up in Australia, but if you've gone overseas and you know people from over there and whatever, then that's one of really the only ways you will ever get seen
Yeah.
over here because you've got the Caribbean, you've got like the Dominican Republic and all that. You got Canada, America, Mexico, even like Japan and Korea and all that. They're massive for baseball. Australia, you don't
That's what I was about to
see,
say, yeah.
yeah, you don't associate baseball with Australia.
Not Mo.
But when I first started, I was baffled by how big the baseball community was
Yeah,
and how many baseball fields are around like Western Sydney and whatever. There's multiple, and I'm like, I never knew any of those were here.
really.
But like, there's one Hills Hornets. There's one at the back end of that. You know,
Oh my gosh, there is, yeah,
yeah,
I completely forgot about
yeah.
that,
Go
yeah,
down right the end of the road.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's where I started the whole baseball process.
yeah,
And the reason I got into baseball was because a friend of mine went over to the States, televised on ESPN. It was called the Little League World Series.
okay,
And he was, what, we were in year five, year six. So what, 11 or 12?
yeah,
Um, and watching watching him play, I thought, oh, this is actually quite cool. I'd
yeah,
like to get into that.
yeah,
And then uh, he was there for like 3 or 4 weeks. He came back, and then everyone was sort of like you do at that age. If you're on TV at that age, everyone's just like, oh my god, right? And and him and I were like that.
yeah,
And then I said I was starting baseball, and all of a sudden it completely flipped. He was like, "Why are you stealing my sport?" Like all that, and I'm like, "Oh, here we go."
calm down, mate.
Yeah, but I'm like, "Come on!" And when I actually started, I'm like, "It's not your sport." How many? Look how many people. Like there were like 4 or 5 people at the time in my grade that were doing baseball.
Yeah,
So I was like, if any, I'm not taking it. The other four are.
yeah,
So it's like, what are you trying to get at? But then before we were actually teammates, we had to verse each other, and every time it'd be like, oh, because he's predominantly a pitcher,
yeah,
and he's like, oh, I'm going to strike you out, like I'm going to get you out, all that sort of rubbish, and I'm like, well, you should. You've just represented the country, and I've started out. Like
yeah, of course.
you should. He did, and so he's had that against me ever since. But I'm like, you've been playing for 7 years. I started 2 weeks ago. Get a grip of yourself.
Exactly.
Um, but then fast forward a couple of years, and we actually were in the same team together just for club. I don't know what it is because we both can't stand each other. I don't know what it is, but when we're on the field, it's like we're best mates.
Yeah,
Not necessarily because like we talk to each other and stuff. It's just when he gets the ball in the field and I play first base, he sort of plays wherever. When he gets the ball and like the combination between me and him, it's like we're inseparable.
yeah,
But we can't stand each other. I can't figure out how that's possible. Like we've got so much trust in each other that we're going to do the right thing, yet we despise each other. So it's really like,
like a frenemy
yeah,
relationship, yeah,
yeah, which I don't mind
yeah,
because at the end of the day, if we get the results, we get the results. Like personal and sporting relationships don't have to be completely the same.
like, exactly.
So, and at the end of the day, we're both so competitive that if it came to it, we'd put all the personal rubbish behind
Yeah,
and just focus on getting the results, which is what we ended up doing for 3, 4 years.
yeah,
And I'm like, I've never understood how or why, but it just works.
yeah,
It's just something that maybe it's because we do know each other so well because we had been friends for so many years previous.
yeah,
It's sort of just maybe it's just like a natural thing that even though you know we don't particularly like each other now, we still have that trust in each other to actually get the job done.
yeah.
So I love playing with him. I just don't like spending time with him afterwards. But um, yeah, I and he was one that like as a kid, we all thought he was going to the States,
Yeah,
but then sort of as everyone else got older, he was sort of leveling out
Yeah.
to everyone else's ability. I don't even know whether he's still playing or not anymore, but um, like he was all the way up here compared to everyone else when we were like 10, 11. But then, by the time we're 15, 16, he's basically the exact same.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's purely because he wasn't willing to put the work in.
Yeah.
He had the skill and he had the talent and he knew the people. He just didn't. He wasn't bothered to put the work in, and then, girls got involved and all that
All
sort
the
of stuff.
other
And then,
extracts. Yeah.
and then he either just stopped altogether, or he's just playing like B grade or whatever he's playing. But at the time, he could have played a really high level, but he just didn't have the work ethic. And he did it as a kid. Maybe it was because he did so much at a young age that it sort of burnt him out as he got older. I don't know.
That definitely could be it. A lot of people have suffer from that, where they're born into an environment that they were born into an environment and they weren't able to choose for themselves if they wanted to actually be in that environment.
Mm.
Like if you're playing basketball every day of your life, or you're playing baseball, whatever, as a kid, and then you grow up and then you're playing because your parents are going, go play, not because you want to.
His parents in particular are a bit like that as well.
So it definitely could be like in his mind, it's better to fail or to play like a lower grade than stopping and disappointing his parents.
Mm.
Like it's not his fault he can't play that good anymore, where it's actually, I don't want to, I'm trying to slow it down a bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for joining the podcast. This
No
actually
worries.
has been officially the longest podcast we've ever had. It was actually so great talking to you. You're an incredible talker, and I'd love to have you on the podcast again.
Sweet.
That's
Thank
really
you.
good.
Very nice.
I have to say a couple of things. Firstly, thank you very much, Bella Vista Hotel, for hosting us today. They've been awesome. The gear is incredible. So please check out the Bella Vista Hotel if you ever want to book a podcast and be like here today. Thank you again, Matthew. Do you want to say your social media to the camera and get some followers?
I don't even know what it is. I think it's just Mathew Ruff _ I think.
Something like that.
I think so.
I'll put it up on the screen, so don't worry. We've got that. Thank you again, and thank you very much for watching on Spotify. Sorry, thank you very much for watching on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you for listening on Spotify, and I'll catch you all later.
All the crazy shit I did to you, that would be the best therapy for me. Hey, hey, yeah, yeah.